You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
Hello and welcome to another Podzine dated the 10th of December 2007.
It's a podcast. It's a magazine. No, it's a podzine.
Hello everybody and welcome once again to another Podzine, the audio magazine for outdoors people everywhere. Well, I hope you had a good week. December seems to be here and trundling on, no matter how much we try and stop it. And as usual, we've got this wonderful weather situation of snow in the north and rain in the south. Oh yes, doesn't it just make you feel like Christmas? Well, talking of which, people are obviously thinking about travel and getting away, as the new travel show series we've started over on the Outdoor Station has taken some serious downloads and some very big hits. So thanks for that, and do by all means give us your feedback if it's some use to you or the range of things you'd like us to include within the travel show, but please do. You can contact us at the email address, which is info@theoutdoorstation.co.uk, or you can phone us on our message phone line. And if you have a message to tell us or some information about any events going on or whatever, do record a message on there and we'll spin it into the programme. The telephone number is 020 8133 9434. That's 020 8133 9434. And that's a Skype in number. So if you're on Skype, you can actually just dial that number and it won't cost a bean. Otherwise, it's just normal local rates. We're also hearing that more retailers are taking on the show on board to play in the background of the shops and so on for the customers. So welcome aboard, everybody. And here's hoping there's something for everyone in these shows for you and for your customers. Now, talking about the show today, coming up we have a chat with the well-respected writer, photographer and gear guru Chris Townsend, who joins us to discuss the innovations of 2008 and thoughts for 2000 got that wrong way around. Innovations for 2007 and thoughts for 2008. Oh, all the best plans go to pot, don't they? Plus, our other regular contributor, Andy Howell, is joining us, and after a rummage through his bookshelf for some thumping good reads during these darker months. And of course, we'll be announcing the two winners of the fabulous National Trails books, Paddy Dillon's books there, and set the new competition to win another sensational prize. So stay tuned. Now, I noticed that Jonathan Manning, editor at Country Walking magazine, has finally joined the new media revolution in the salubrious company of Claire Balding on BBC Radio 4's for a ramble along Northumberland's coastal path. And the links to that series are in our links page on the Outdoors Station. And an enjoyable little piece it is too. I'm sure he enjoyed that. So I wonder if we're going to be hearing more from him. I also see on the internet there's a lot of frenzy going on at the moment, a bit of a feeding frenzy from the bargain hunters following the sad demise of Planet Fear, who are clearing out all their odd bits and bobs via eBay. It does seem a hot topic on the forums, and the jury are split between bargains galore and a bargain, and the fact that it isn't really doing quality retailers much good, certainly at this time of year when they're hoping to make up for the last dreadful winter and the lousy summer that we've had. The retail trade has had a pretty tough time. So think about that when you're looking at those things on eBay, and think about if your local retailer deserves your support. So I'm sure he'd appreciate it, and you'll get, of course, much better service. There's nothing much on the diary front for the dates at the moment, but I have picked up a couple of things for people in case they're interested. Basically on outdoorsmagic.com, I see Dave Mycroft's organising a walk up in the Peak District on the 15th of December in a few days' time, and Simon Chaplin is trying to put together a walk on around the Brecons, probably around Pen y Fan, between Christmas and the New Year, and I might actually try and get along to that. That should be pretty good. So that's on outdoorsmagic.com, so join in with that if you can. But very little else going on. Anyway, let's get on with the show and hear from Andy Howell, who's been rummaging through his bookshelf on your behalf. Now, these sections aren't replacing the book club podcasts, by the way, where we speak to authors and have a good, full, in-depth interview. These are merely little tasters for when you're next passing your favourite bookshop.
The Podzine. Winter is here and it gets more difficult to take a good walk. The days get shorter and of course the weather can be so bad that it literally drives us indoors. At times like these, a good book can help us keep the passion for the outdoors alive. Over the next few months on the Podzine, I'll be taking an occasional look at some of the best outdoor books that are available at bookshops or over the net. And it's coming up to that time of year again, so if you're looking for a gift for an outdoor person, looking to drop a hint to a loved one, or simply looking to spend those book tokens, then our reviews are here to help. So let's crack on and look at our first selection of 3 books. My first book is The Wild Places by Robert Macfarlane. Macfarlane stormed onto the scene a couple of years ago with Mountains of the Mind, his first book that looked at our complicated and complex relationship with mountain ranges throughout the world. Part history, part memoir, and part meditation, Mountains of the Mind was simply a stunning book. Indeed, it was so good that I often wondered just how on earth Macfarlane could follow it up. I needn't have worried, as The Wild Places is a worthy successor, and if anything, shows how Macfarlane has improved his craft and skill over the last couple of years. Here Macfarlane turns to the British Isles, and more specifically to the wild places of Scotland, Ireland, Wales and England. The book follows his quest to spend time in some of our remaining wilderness. There were some obvious places here, some of the more dramatic parts of Scotland, on Skye or Rannoch Moor, but there were also trips to small islands off the Welsh coast, and to some of the wonderful beech woods that can still be found in the south of England, next door to some of our biggest cities. Of course, Macfarlane doesn't just describe the experience of camping out in the wild. We learn about the history of our wild places and of some of the changes and movements that took so many of them away from us. We learn about some of the great pioneers of wilderness exploration and how their love of British wild places inspired them to great achievements elsewhere. There were lovely passages showing how the memories of our wild places helped soldiers get through the misery of war, and we learn of the natural history of places as diverse as the Scottish tundra and the English deep wood. Above all else, I guess, Macfarlane just shows how many wild places still do exist in our small islands, and he reminds us why it's so important to fight to retain them. The writing here is of the highest quality, top-class prose, verging on the poetic. If this sounds like your kind of thing, then don't hesitate to rush out and get hold of a copy. My second choice is a very different kind of a book, an evocation of the spirit of a single place. Connemara, Listening to the Wind, is the work of Tim Robinson, a Yorkshireman artist and writer who settled in the Connemara town of Roundstone on the west coast of Ireland some 20 years ago. Robinson has devoted much of his time in Roundstone to the mapping of its landscape, to the documenting of its history, the collection of its myths, legends and song, and to the exploration of the geography, flora and fauna of Connemara. Robinson's 20 years of work has come together in a quite extraordinary book. We learn, for example, about the many islands that lie off the mainland, of the communities that sought to eke out such a basic existence in this harsh landscape, and we learn of their islands' return to a more natural, non-human state. We relive the story of the founding of Roundstone and hear of the lives of the many characters that have helped shape that place. And we walk with Robinson as he explores the hills, valleys and byways of his adopted homeland. One of the most fascinating chapters in this book is all about peat bog. Yes, peat bogs. Anyone who spent hours slogging over a peat bog will just love this section. Robinson maps out the bog behind Roundstone, shows how the bog has been an important feature in the shaping of that place. But we learn about the science of the bog and of the international study of bogs, much of which began through the exploration of the bog behind the tiny town of Roundstone. And we also go with Robinson as he sets forth with one of the last of the peat cutters, learning how the peat is cut, dried and stored, a far more precise and skilled process than I had ever imagined. A book about bogs, just made for hill walkers everywhere. Listening to the Wind is probably my best book discovery of 2007, and I reckon is quite unlike anything I've read before. If you love Ireland, then there's lots for you here. But even if you've never visited this Green Isle, I reckon you won't find this anything less than fascinating. My mate Humphrey Waitman has also read Listening to the Wind this year and was so impressed that he continues to buy copies for many of his friends. It's that kind of book. Once read, you feel you just have to share it with others. My final book is from an old friend, Martin Wainwright, the Northern editor of The Guardian. Over the last couple of years, Martin has produced 2 wonderful compilations drawn from The Guardian Country Diary column. The first, A Lifetime of Mountains, which featured the wonderful writing of the Lakeland diarist A. Harry Griffin, and the second, A Gleaming Landscape, that drew on the full range of the Country Diary, that small but beautifully crafted column that has appeared each day in The Guardian for over 100 years. You can hear Martin talking about both of these books on a previous book club podcast here on the Outdoor Station. Now Martin has produced his third and final collection of country diaries, The Guardian Book of Wartime Country Diaries. Martin has enthused about these diaries whenever I've met him, and having read them now I can see why. There really is something very special about them. This is not quite the story of 2 world wars. Rather, it's the chronicle of the less familiar story of how the struggles between the great European powers and against Hitler reached into the very quietest corners of the British countryside. Through the diaries we experience Battle of Britain vapour trails looping over summer cornfields, diarists discussing the effects of planes on hawks and waterfowl. A lone ringed bird limps in from vanished Czechoslovakia. A naturalist studies the insect and plant life of a bomb crater. Women and children bring in the harvest as their menfolk fight in Flanders. And many of the 20th century's other wars are reflected here, from Abyssinia to Iraq. If you've enjoyed the previous 2 compilations, then the War Diaries are a must. And if you've not caught up with the diaries at all, then you should make a point in doing so. The diary entries are wonderfully written, brief and concise, but full of interest and entertainment. And the books themselves are also wonderful things to own and to handle, slipping easily into a coat jacket or a rucksack pocket. Just the thing for dipping in and out of, whether you're at home, commuting, or on the trail. So, 3 great books for our first Podzine selection. The Wild Places by Robert Macfarlane is published by Granta Books and is only currently available in hardback. Sells for £18.99, but you can find it for less than a tenner in some major bookstores and on the net. Connemara, Listening to the Wind by Tim Robinson is published by Penguin in paperback and costs £8.99, although again you can easily find it available at a lower price. And finally, I talked about the Guardian Book of Wartime Country Diaries, compiled by Martin Wainwright. This is published by The Guardian in hardback and costs £12.99, and again you can find it cheaper. I'll be back soon with some more reviews of some of the very best in travel writing, only here on the Outdoor Station.
My thanks to Andy Howell for rummaging through his shelves for us and checking out some good reading material for the darker weeks and months. We certainly hope to be hearing more from him over the next few months as the Podzines progress. Now, Chris Townsend is a very well-respected writer, photographer and gear guru who, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, has certainly seen some outdoor kit in his time. Some good, some bad, and some downright impressive. So I thought it might be interesting as we come to the close of 2007 to have a chat with him and see if anything in particular had impressed him this year.
Well, I think the most interesting item, the really innovative one, was the sat-nav GPS unit, because I think it's the first one that's designed for walkers and mountaineers first and foremost, which means that it's, water resistant, dust resistant, easy to use, simple controls. I mean, you can pick it up and work out how to use it very quickly. A nice, bright, clear screen, plenty of colour. You'll be able to load cards on it with maps on, so it'll have all the information. You can connect it to a computer, but you don't need to. I think it certainly takes GPS, another stage.
Well, it certainly was a superb piece of equipment when I saw it in Friedrichshafen with yourself, and it definitely of the GPS equipment that I've seen so far, from an ergonomic design point of view, it was one I actually felt I could take out on the hills and confidently use.
Oh yeah, it's certainly much easier to use than others. I mean, I've tried quite a few over the years, and some of them aren't bad, but you always get the impression that they're not specifically designed for hill use, so there's always a degree of compromise there, whereas this one is just for hill use.
You had a bit of a bad experience with actual GPS signals this year, didn't you? So that's always worth remembering as well.
I certainly wouldn't rely on a GPS on its own and not carry a map and compass as well. Yes, I had an experience where basically I could not get a signal for 5 hours in the Cairngorms. Now, I wasn't using the GPS for navigation, so this didn't matter. I was using it to record the route so I could download it to the PC and have a definite record of where I'd been and distance and so on for writing about it. Now, this was on early in the morning. I was out between 3 o'clock and 8 o'clock. It was clear sky. I was up on Ben Arn, so you've got the biggest expanse of sky you can imagine. So absolutely nothing, no cliffs, trees, clouds, or anything that could block signals. I'd camped high the night before and got a perfectly good signal and recorded my route into the camp and then recorded the campsite as a waymark. So it was working fine when I went to sleep. Got up the next morning, nothing. Left it, carried it on top of the pack where it had a clear view of the sky, and which is where I normally carry the GPS to record routes. And there was no route recorded, no signal at all. And then on top of Ben Arm, when I was wandering around taking photographs and climbing up the summit cairn, I left it out in the open. And I was looking at it at 5 to 8, there was no signal. I looked again sort of 5 minutes later, 8 o'clock, bang, the signal suddenly appeared.
And do you think that was that the people had turned off, whoever they are, had turned off the signals, or it was a satellite aligning problem?
I imagine it was a satellite aligning problem, because I think, if they turned off the signals, plenty of other people would have noticed. Possibly aircraft would have noticed, because it would have been a wide area. But I'm not certain. I don't know if they can turn off the signals for a small area for any reason. But whatever, I think the key thing is, if I'd been dependent on it for navigation, if, say, a big storm had come in during the night and I'd had to abandon camp because it was quite a high exposed campsite and get down in the dark or in thick mist, and I'd been relying on it for navigation, I could have had serious problems.
But, I mean, that's the technology, but the actual piece of equipment, the MapNav system is superb, isn't it?
I think it's by far and away the best GPS, for hill walking and backpacking that I've seen, yes.
So what about other best equipment? How about footwear? Has anything struck you as being particularly unique or new this year?
Well, a few things, yeah. I mean, one of them, briefly, it's been out for a while. We've had the Innovate Gore-Tex boot, which is undoubtedly the lightest boot with a Gore-Tex lining. I don't actually like Gore-Tex linings, but if you do, you can now get a very lightweight footwear with it. But the shoe that I've really liked is the Go Light Trail Fly. Now, Go Light, of course, are brand new to shoes. They've never done any footwear before. And it's a very peculiar-looking thing because it's all synthetic. It's got a sort of lattice-work top and then these foam-like ribs on it. And the sole, which has a bit of bright orange on it that I'm not that keen on, has these enormous studs that are quite soft and compress. So when I first saw it, I thought, apart from looking weird, I thought, I don't think that's going to be very comfortable. But actually on trying it, I found it's very comfortable. On a really hard surface, the studs have a bit of give in them, and it feels slightly odd at first. But on rough ground, and I've used this, all over the Cairngorms, rocky ground, boggy ground, and so on, it's been great. And it's not as light as Innovate, but as trail shoes go, it's pretty light. So I reckon, they're onto a good winner here.
So is that one, is it designed to be a trail shoe, a running shoe, or a sort of an adventure racing shoe, or is it a general all-round thing?
I suspect from the name, Trailfly, they're probably thinking of it, for adventure racing. But I've used it, for hill walking and backpacking, and it's been fine.
No, so we'll keep an eye open for that one next year then. What about on the cookers front? Because we sort of had a rush of new designs come through the last couple of years. Is there anything this year that's moved on slightly, do you think?
Well, there's a development of a design that I think is two developments of designs I think is very good. The first one is, yes, following on, from the success of Jetboil and the idea of an integrated system with a heat exchanger built in, other manufacturers brought out their versions of this over a year ago now. The problem with all of them was they were all pretty heavy. Even if you took them out for two people, they were still pretty heavy. So although they were much more fuel efficient than other stoves, you could still carry, a much lighter stove and pan and fuel and end up with less weight. But Primus, who are one of the companies who brought out one of the rival ones, have now brought out a much lighter version called the Etter Express, which has got a sort of large mug with the heat exchanger welded to the bottom, and a stove which is a bit like a stripped down, if you can have that version of the Micron, and a built-in windshield that sort of clips onto the burner. Now, I've only got a prototype of this, and the windshield doesn't really fit very well, so I haven't been using it. I can see that, when they finish the design, it should be pretty good. But even using it, with the standard foil windscreen, I found the fuel usage is much better than with other stoves. And it's light enough to mean that I think if you were out for, more than a few days, it could actually save weight over a simple ultralight stove and pot.
Where do you think the development of these heat exchangers is going to go through to? Is there anywhere else they can move forward to, do you think, in the design? I think integrated windshields like this, I think it's a question of getting the weight down now. I mean, again, this pan is anodized aluminium. No one has yet done one of these with titanium, which would obviously bring the weight down. And it does seem to me that to build a heavy system that's fuel efficient rather defeats the purpose, in that unless you're out for an incredibly long time, you're not actually going to have any weight saving. You're just adding the weight onto the stove and pan system and taking it off the fuel. Whereas if you can take it off both, then it has big advantages. And I think this Etter Express is the first one that does actually take weight off both. All right, okay. Well, certainly some of these stoves have a very, very particular customer in mind, particularly the MSR reactor stove. That isn't something you would take generally backpacking in this country, is it?
You could do.
Well,
I don't see why not. It's quite heavy. It's quite a nice system, and it's certainly very efficient, very fast. For two people, it's okay. I would just say it doesn't come under the heading of lightweight backpacking.
No, I was thinking more its customer base being probably people who are definitely winter mountaineering, that are wanting to melt snow and use something that's very efficient. But of course, it does give off a certain amount of fumes as well, so you have to make sure you use it well ventilated. Yes,
it's designed for outdoors, but that's interesting. The whole thing of winter mountaineering, because I mean, last January, February, I did a ski tour in Yellowstone National Park, which is snowbound and very cold. I mean, we had temperatures down to minus 35,
Oof.
So extremely cold, and we were mostly not cooking, in temperatures quite that cold. But what we actually took to use in the igloos was a screw-in Primus cartridge stove and a hose-connected cartridge stove, just standard cartridge stoves. And in the igloos, they worked fine in temperatures, well, certainly down to, minus 12, minus 15. And we were melting all our water, for cooking and everything else. So we were melting snow a lot of the time. And we found the stove we used for snow melting was, in fact, a very simple screw-in cartridge stove. You keep it on a low heat, not blasting away, which makes it more fuel efficient. Put a bit of water in, dump the snow in, and run it for a couple of hours and just melt lots of snow, and that worked fine. And of course, if you're in any sort of snow shelter, an igloo, snow hole, anything else, or even in a winter tent that, you've got a valance, you've piled snow around it, you definitely want stoves that are as safe as possible and don't give out too many fumes. So you wouldn't want the reactor. And the guy I went with, Ed Hughes, who designs a tool called the Icebox for building igloos, he's actually, tested stoves and tested the carbon monoxide output to check that stoves used in igloos, are safe. And these, very light, simple canister stoves he worked out were best, and they worked fine. Again, the traditional stoves for winter mountaineering, petrol stoves, like the MSR XGK, which are very efficient. I've used them a lot. I wouldn't want to use one inside a closed snow shelter, however. Because apart from anything else, you've got all the flaring when you light them. So I'm beginning to think that, basic canister stoves will do most things pretty well.
Talking of basic sort of stoves, there's nothing simpler than using fossil fuels, of course. And there's been one or two stoves that have come out this year which have been encouraging a sort of a combination of being able to use wood burning and meths as well.
Well, the stove I've actually used most this year and like most is the Caldera Cone, which is a meth stove. The burner is a simple, drinks can stove, and it works okay. The thing that's exciting is the cone itself, which is this cone that completely surrounds the stove, and the pan fits in top of it, sealing in the heat. And this is easy to use. It's windproof, so you can use it in any sort of wind without any problems. It's fuel efficient, and it's hot, so it boils water pretty fast. It's really the nearest thing I've found that comes to an ultralight version of the Trangia. However, what has just appeared, and I have to admit I've only ever seen this on the internet, I haven't actually seen one in real life, but a company called Titanium Goat, which I think is a wonderful name for a company, Titanium Goat are making a Tri Caldera system from titanium, of course, with their name, but this is designed so you can burn wood in it. So it comes with an alcohol stove. It also comes with a setup for using solid fuel tablets, and you can use wood inside it as well, which is quite interesting. I don't know of any other stove that's anything like this. And looking at the pictures, it comes with a pot that fits in the top, which is almost a litre, I think, 900 ml pot. And the whole thing looks superb.
Well, that should be one to keep an eye on for next year. Talking about next year, any predictions? Anything you sort of you've heard about in the manufacturing world that might be just sort of starting to bubble under at all and come through?
Well, actually, no, not at the moment. But we've had a lot of revamps in the last couple of years. As you said, there's been all these developments in stoves. There's been a lot of work on tents and packs. And I think, what we're going to see now, as with the Eta Express and the Titanium Goat Caldera system, is, if you like, refinements and improvements to some of the newer designs, rather than brand new things that, that no one has come up with before.
Do you think the innovation is led from the UK? Because sadly, our manufacturing base seems to have slipped overseas. But our innovations and designs, are people still pushing the envelope, as it were?
I think in some areas, yes. I mean, I think the UK companies are still good in the areas of tents, with Terra Nova, obviously. Waterproof clothing, which I think has always been down to our climate, but I think, generally UK companies make better waterproofs than either American or other European country ones do. So I think this, we're still good in that, and clothing in general, really, with companies like Montaigne and Rab and Paramo and so on. Sleeping bags as well. I mean, to some extent, it's UK companies. Again, Rab Mountain Equipment, and now PhD, who made the first ultralight sleeping bags. In some respects, I mean, stoves, for example, there hasn't really been anything in Britain innovative in stoves. Probably since Epigas disappeared, which is going back a long way. I mean, the stoves are all Scandinavian or American. So there's definitely a gap in the market for someone to do something on stoves in the UK.
Well, on that note, Chris, we'll leave it and keep our eyes open for what comes in 2008. Well, thanks very much indeed for your time, Chris. It's been great chatting to you about the products from this year and looking forward to next year. And all I can do now is wish you and your family a happy Christmas.
Thank you, and of course the same to you and your family.
Well, thanks very much there to Chris for his thoughts on some of the new products coming through 2007 into 2008, and I'm sure we'll be speaking to him again very soon. Which now leads us on to our very popular competition section. Very popular indeed, and I notice in particular we're getting more and more entries from overseas listeners. We've had people entering from Netherlands, from France, from Italy. Of course, last week's winner, Roman Ackel, was from Germany. And the other people that are picking up on it and entering, which is great to see, is the bloggers, the outdoor bloggers. They're picking up on these programs and entering, so which is really good news. Let's now have a look. The competition last week was for 2 copies of the National Trails Handbook by Paddy Dillon, courtesy of Cicerone Press. Thank you very much indeed for donating that. They're valued at £17 each, and the question was, how many trails are actually mentioned in the books? How many trails are mentioned in the books? And we had quite a few answers, and of course the correct answer is 19. There are 19 trails. So all it needs now is for us to kick the machine off and see who it randomly picks out as the winners. Yes, I love these old machines. They're really good, aren't they? And we have two winners for the new National Trails book. And the winners are David McCabe. I don't know where David's from, actually. It's from the UK somewhere, looking at the telephone number. So, well done, David. Congratulations. And please let me know your address so we can get that copy off to you. And the second winner is, oh, would you believe it? It's an outdoor blogger. It's the Bearded Git. Steph, known as the Bearded Git, has won the second copy. So congratulations to you two. Give me your addresses and we'll get those off to you as soon as possible. Okay, so on to this week's competition, which is very exciting, actually. We once again have a rucksack. Yes, we have a Lightwave 42-litre S-Series rucksack as the competition prize this week, valued at £75. It is blue, it is size 2, which means it's suitable for men between sort of 5'7" and 6 foot, and women over 5'9". It's 930 grams and a general all-round good rucksack. Lovely lightweight. It's got 2 side pockets, 2 good hip belt pockets, compression units, lid pocket and so on, and it's a 1-unit sack. So we're very popular for people for weekend walks or day walks or whatever. And that's courtesy of Lightwave, so thank you very much indeed to them. Now, to win this rucksack and be a proud owner before Christmas, you need to answer this simple question. The question is, what material is the frame of the rucksack made from? What material is the frame of the rucksack made from? And I want the full answer on that. And the answer, of course, might be found on the lightwave.uk.com website, but I don't want to give you any clues. And, of course, all details for the competition will be found on the Outdoors Station website. So what material is the frame made of on the S-Series rucksack? Now, where do you send your answers? Well, you send your answers to Lightwave-competition at theoutdoorstation.co.uk. That's Lightwave-competition on theoutdoorstation.co.uk. Anyway, that pretty well finishes the show this week. Hope you've enjoyed it. The full details and show notes, of course, will be on the Outdoor Station website, and we look forward to hearing from you in the next few days. In the meantime, have a good week and enjoy your Christmas shopping. Bye for now.
This independent programme has been brought to you by The Outdoor Station, the exciting new way to see and hear free information about the outdoors world. If you're a blogger, or if you have a website, you can now incorporate any of these podcasts directly to your site, completely free. Visit our website, theoutdoorstation.co.uk, for more information.